Well, hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to try something a bit different. I'm going to be very quickly going over a Dungeons & Dragons homebrew class that I've created. This took me a little over 2 weeks to make. It's subject to change as time goes on, and I will leave links to the home brewery where I made it in the description, because that should keep up to date with all the changes. So the Spellslinger, the whole concept was I wanted to make a class that gave the kind of Destiny 2 Space Wizard vibe without all the futuristic technology. The use of some firearms combined with a little bit of magic. So I'm going to skip over most of the lore here. I'm not sure what this gap is at the end of each page, because it's not like that on the digital version, but the PDF I've downloaded seems to have it. Either way, here we are. So this here is our class table, and you can see right away the Spellslinger is a half caster, as it's got the spell slots and spells known up to 5th level. And it also has another column called Bullet Arts Known. This is the one of 2 main features of the class that you don't get access to until 2nd level. You do, in first level, get access to 2 features, the Spellslinging Focus and the Spellslinger's Trance, which I'll get to in a second. So, based on the quick build here, you want to make Dexterity your highest score, as most of your attacking will be done with firearms, which use Dexterity, and then followed by Intelligence, because that is your spellcasting ability. For your hit dice, you've got a standard 1d8 per level, starting with 8 plus your Constitution modifier. Pretty basics there. Armor, you're proficient in light and medium armor. Simple weapons and firearms are your only weapon proficiencies, so anything that comes under the firearms tag, which you can discuss with your dungeon master specifically. You're also proficient with Tinker's Tools, Dexterity, and Intelligence saves, and for your skills, you pick 2 out of the list: Arcana, Acrobatics, Investigation, Perception, History, Sleight of Hand, and Stealth. So a lot of you've got a lot of intelligence-based ones there, some dexterity-based ones, as well as perception, which I'll get to later. It's to give the class kind of a, if you wanted to go for more of a sniper type vibe with the eagle eye type vision, then that's what the perception is for. So in terms of equipment, you can start with a blunderbuss and 20 shells, a musket and 20 bullets, or any simple weapon. You can choose scale mail or leather armor. You start with a Dungeoneer's pack or an Explorer's pack, and you have to you get a pepper box, 20 bullets, a dagger, and Tinker's Tools. If you're one of those people who likes to do gear buying and rolling for gold, I have not integrated that, and that might need to be something you talk with your dungeon master about, as firearms, depending on the setting, can be quite pricey. So, to our first ribbon, we'll do the Spellslinger's Trance. This here is a bonus action to activate, which lasts for a minute, or until you choose to end it without any action required. And while active, you have advantage on perception checks. You choose either fire, lightning, necrotic, or cold damage, and that becomes the new damage type for the firearm you're holding. And you get additional damage equal to proficiency bonus when hitting a target with a firearm once per turn, and you have a number of charges equal to your proficiency bonus expended which restored on a long rest. So that's pretty much your like a basic kind of ribbon, like a Barbarian's Rage or the Hexblade's Curse. That was kind of my inspiration for the description for the functionality of it. The advantage on perception checks again was to give that sort of keen sight vibe, and this here, the damage type, I was very much inspired by transform like a golden gun in Destiny, for those who've played that game, where you get a weapon of a certain damage type. And the additional damage was I realized that these two were kind of weak, so I needed something to make it worthwhile. The Spellslinging focus, so you can pick 2 hours, you can pick 2 weapons and spend 1 hour forming a bond with them, 2 firearms of your choice. When you've bonded with it, it acts as your spell casting focus, so you don't have to use, so you can cast your spells through it. And while you're bonded to it, you can summon it from anywhere on the planes of existence to your hand when you enter Spellslinger's trance. And that feature gets an upgrade at level 11 to give you a +1 bonus to hit and spell save DC when you cast spells through it. Now at level 2, you get access to spellcasting, which is pretty straightforward. That's consistent through all Dungeons & Dragons classes, so I'm not going to bother going into too much detail there. The next most important thing about this class is bullet arts. These are essentially your bread and butter. They act in a way sort of similar to like a paladin's smite, but you also get some interesting and somewhat unique variation. So you can mix and match your bullet arts to fit the vibe that you're going for. So we'll start here with our basic arts, and then we'll get to our more intense ones later. So there's a lot of ones where that have no cost to activate. You can only use 1 per turn unless it specifies otherwise. And like Eldritch Invocations with a Warlock, you can swap them out as you level up. So when you level up, let's say I took this art, and I took Searing Art, and I didn't want it anymore, I could swap it out for something else I had access to when I leveled up. So Searing Art, we'll start here, it's pretty basic. A d4 of fire damage, plus an additional d6 without any requirements. So that's just an extra 1d4 and 1d6 onto your regular attack damage, and that's fire damage. Which increases, a lot of these arts will scale like cantrips, so that increases to 2d4 at 5th level, 3d4 at 11th, and 4d4 at 17th. Notice how it specifies Spellslinger level. So if you were to take 2 levels in Spellslinger, then 3 in another class, it would not scale up. Because that would make it essentially the same as taking a cantrip. This is a class that should be, it's more rewarding to invest in all your levels. So that's that. You can also choose to spend spell slots to enhance that additional d6. You can increase it by a number of d6s equal to the spell level. So let's say you wanted to deal a bit of extra damage, you got a critical hit, for example, because you can choose to activate this after attack rolls. So let's say you got a critical hit and you decided you wanted to pump a bit of extra damage, you could chuck some spell slots into it and make it a little better. Next, we have the Blasting Art, which functions the same. After making an attack roll with firearm you're proficient, you can choose to activate it. This one deals an additional 1d6 bludgeoning, and the target gets pushed back 10 feet, and as per usual, scales up like a cantrip to 2d6, then 3d6, then 4d6, cannot be enhanced by spell slots. So you're trading off that extra d4 of damage and the ability to enhance it by spell slots to push someone back 10 feet like Repelling Blast. And again, that's completely free to activate. Frostbitten Art. This one here is d4 of cold damage, and it reduces a target's movement speed by 10 feet and cannot be enhanced by spell slots, but it does scale up. So in an effective, if you're just trying to run away from someone, the Blasting Art and the Frostbitten Art might have the same effect. But if you're trying to hinder someone's escape attempts, the Frostbitten Art can come in pretty helpful. The next one, Lightning Arc Art, was inspired by the Green Flame Blade and cantrips like that. So again, after making the attack roll, you choose to activate it. The target suffers the weapon's normal effects, and you choose lightning to arc to another target within 10 feet, causing lightning damage equal to your intelligence modifier. And like Booming Blade, or Green Flame Blade rather, this damage scales up equally So at 5th level, there's an additional d4 lightning damage to both targets, and then that increases again to 2d4 at 11th level, and 3d4 and 3d4 at 17th level. Fearful Art is basically the frightening or the fearful smite, wrathful smite, I think it is, for paladins. It's an extra d6 of damage. Does require you to spend a first level spell slot. So this one is not free. Does require you to spend a first level spell slot to activate it. Deals an extra d6 of damage. Forces a wisdom save, or the target is frightened on concentration. And they make a saving throw at the end of their turns, ending the effect on a success, and you can cast its spells above first to deal extra damage. Piercing Art doesn't have any requirements. You can choose to use this after making an attack roll. Deals an extra 1d6 piercing damage, and there's another. You can make another attack roll against another target in 60 feet in the same direction from which you were facing of the original target. So if it hits the original target and there's another one in 60 feet of that target in the same line, it's a 60-foot line, like a breath weapon. And then you can, on a hit, then the target takes the normal damage. You can spend spell slots to increase, or first level higher, to increase the number of targets pierced by 1 per spell level above first to a max, or 1 by spell level, to a maximum of 3. I should get rid of that there. Next, the Ricochet Art, which allows you to, rather than go from a straight line and deal extra damage, it just allows you to bounce off to any target within 15 feet. You have to pick this one before you make the attack. So this one, you hit the target, and then whether you hit or miss, you can target another creature within 15 feet and make a separate attack roll. Each target takes full damage, but are counted as separate attacks and separate damage rolls. Cannot be enhanced. Sniper's Art's a pretty basic one. It allows you to double the total range of an attack before you make an attack roll. You can use other bullet arts on the same attack as that one. So that one's more of just a quality of life improvement, especially if you've got the sharpshooter feat and you wanna really be a sniper. Now we start getting to the scaled up ones. So you can see these ones have a level requirement in the Spellslinger class, and that's because they require you to spend spell slots, or well, most of them. We'll get to that now. So the Necrosis Art here is a 2nd level spell slot, 2d6 necrotic damage on a failed save, and the target is poisoned, taking an additional d4 of necrotic damage at the end of their turn, every turn, for a minute, or until they succeed on a saving throw at the end of their turns, and they resist the poison. You can obviously upcast it and deal more damage. The Divine Art is very much like a Guiding Bolt. Requires a 2nd level spell slot, an extra 2d8 radiant damage, and the next attack made against the creature has advantage. Which, once you've reached 5th level and you have access to extra attack, can come in pretty handy for yourself, actually. And also, to take some notes from Defiant Smite, it deals extra damage if the target is a fiend or an undead, an additional 1d8 radiant, and you can upcast it, obviously. Hemorrhaging Art, so after rolling for damage, if you didn't use another bullet art on the attack, then you can choose to activate Hemorrhaging Art, and the target makes a Constitution save, or they take half of the damage of the attack at the end of their next turn as necrotic damage. So if you're really going for that necrosis vibe, you can do that there. The Blinding Art requires 13th level, the Hemorrhaging Art required 9th. So the Blinding Art, which requires 13th level, requires a 3rd level spell slot to activate, deals an additional 3d6 radiant, and the target must make a con save or be blinded, which is very much like the Blinding Smite. And again, they remake the save at the end of every one of their turns. I did not put it in there, but I believe this is able to be upcasted as well, but I've just slipped my mind to add. So part of me doing this video, I'm also going to make changes, so I'll leave an updated link in the description. Here we are. So Cataclysm Art is the big boy, requires 17th level, because it requires a 5th level spell slot, which is the highest you will get access to, deals 5d10 damage of the weapon's type, and that bypasses resistance or immunities. So you want to shoot a Tarask, go with fire damage, go for it. Additionally, if you crit, so if you're on 20 on the dice roll, so not a 20 total, but a natural 20, you can activate any other bullet art and cast that you know, and cast it at the lowest level possible without spending any resources. And on the same attack. So that one can be pretty handy. But we've moved past that. There might be more of those in the future, depending on how I'm feeling about playtesting it. Next, at 3rd level, we'll get to the second, but at 3rd level you get your subclass, the Gunslinger styles, which you have choices between the Bloodslinger, the Ether Slinger, or the Shade Slinger, which I'll get to in a second. 4th level is standard ability score improvement at 4th, 8th, 12th, 16th, and 19th levels. You get an extra attack at 5th level, but you can also spend one of your attacks to reload a firearm you are holding instead, if you so choose. And then the next couple of levels are filled with subclass features. So at 10th level, you get the reactive shot, which allows you to... This doesn't actually cost a reaction. When a target enters or leaves your melee range, you can make one attack with a bullet art of your choice. You can use that feature once per round, so it's a reaction without a reaction, because I'm not sure if you might want your reaction for other things. Of course, it can only be used once per round, so it's like a standard attack of opportunity, really. At 13th level, you get access to Quick Caster. This is kind of a combo type feature that I felt like would improve the synergy between the gunslinging and then spellcasting. So if you hit 2 attacks on your turn, you can cast a spell of 3rd level or lower as a bonus action. So if you hit 2 attacks, then decide you want to turn around and huck a fireball at some poor soul, go for it. At 14th level, your spells, you get Trance Agility, which while in your trance, your movement speed increases, and when you move out of melee range, so this is while you're in your Spellslinger's trance, you have a movement speed increased by 10 feet, and when you move out of melee range of a creature, they don't get an attack of opportunity, and it's treated as if you took the disengage action. To translate what I mean by that, if your DM has made an enemy that has the Sentinel feat that bypasses the disengage action, then make sure you let them know, because then they will still hit you, or be able to. At 17th level, you've got Keen Eye, which allows you to see up to a mile away, unobscured, and if you have... This is more beneficial if you don't have dark vision, but it also helps you if you do. Darkness no longer poses disadvantage on perception checks that rely on sight. So if you're a human and you're in a cave and you want to snipe someone, you don't have disadvantage anymore, which you already didn't if you had your trance active, but now if you have your trance active, you can get advantage, which is why it's at 17th level, a very high level feature. At 18th level, you get Absorbing Essence, which is... I kind of added it to add more of a... add a reason not to be spending bullet arts all the time. If you land the final blow on a target without using any bullet arts, so if you land the final blow, you can use bullet arts on the creature, but if the final hit doesn't spend a bullet art, you can roll a d4 and regain spell slots with a combined level equal to or less than what you rolled. So if you rolled a 4, you could regain 4 first levels, or a 3rd level and a 1st level, or 2 second levels, or 2 second level, or a 2nd level and 2 first levels, or something like that. And last but not least, the capstone feature, Mastered Trance, which while you're in your trance, you gain the following benefits. You have a +2 bonus to your armor class. You can change the damage type of your trance as a bonus action, and once per turn when making the attack action, you can make one of your attacks without expending any ammunition. So if you're using a musket or something that only has 1 round, then requires reload, you can take both of your attacks without costing a reload. So, now we move on to our subclasses, the Gunslinger styles. So each of these has one thing in common. They each give you a extra bullet art, which does not count towards your bullet arts known. This is unique to the subclass and unique in function. So, I'll start with the Bloodslinger. This was the first class I did, and it's very much inspired by Blood Hunters, as on D&D Beyond. It very much revolves around spending hit dice, taking damage, but then enhancing or casting a unique bullet art, or enhancing ones you've already cast. So here we have the Maledict art, which does not require spell slots to activate, but it does require you to spend a hit die, taking damage equal to what you roll. So you roll one of your hit dice, roll one of your d8s, take damage from what you roll, and then the damage you take determines the effect. I'm actually going to get rid of this sentence here. You cannot use bullet arts on the same attack as this, and you cannot use this multiple times per attack action. So here's what it does. If you take 1 or 2 damage, then the target takes additional necrotic damage equal to one of the weapon's damage die. On a 3 to 4, the target loses its reaction. That does not work on legendary actions, by the way. Yeah, on a 5 or 6, the target takes an additional d6 of necrotic damage from all attacks made by you for the next minute, so it's like a hex. And 7 to 8, the target is considered vulnerable to the damage of the attack. That might be quite a considerable buff, but you do have to take 7 or 8 damage to activate it. Which is why this class, its features might seem a little more overpowered, but of course it does revolve around literally killing yourself to activate. The other 3rd level feature you get is you can enhance. That's the extra art. The actual feature is you get Crimson enhancements. You can spend a hit die and take damage equal to what you roll, and then choose one of the 3 benefits here. So when you roll bullet art damage, so not the weapon damage, but the bullet art damage, you can reroll 1s and 2s. When making an attack with a bullet art, you can add a bonus to your attack roll. So that would be if you were using something like the Ricochet art, which activates before you make an attack roll. You can add that bonus to the roll, so if you rolled 12 and you had a +5 dexterity, and then you took 3 damage, so you would add your dexterity, your proficiency bonus, then the extra 3 damage you took. Or you can, if the bullet art requires a save, you can subtract the damage you took using this feature from the target's saving throw. Again, you can see how this class is very much high risk, high reward. So the more damage you're willing to take, the better you will be. At 6th level, you get Bloodletting, which is a bit complicated, so I'm going to try and explain this better than the way I've worded it here. You can trigger the feature by spending a hit dice from the You trigger this feature by spending a hit dice to use another feature from this subclass, so Maledict Art or Crimson Enhancements. This feature remains active for a minute or until you spend another hit die to use a subclass feature. While the feature is active, the next time you spend a hit die, you can roll a second time and gain both effects without spending a second hit die, and you only take damage from the first roll. So if that's not clear enough, here's what that means. So if, let's say, I used the Maledict Art on my turn, so I took some damage, Bloodletting then gets active. Then on the same attack, I've decided, yep, I'm going to use a Crimson Enhancement on this Maledict Art. When I'm doing that, I spend a hit die and I take damage, then I can roll another hit die and activate it again, and so get a second benefit from Crimson Enhancements. So I might choose that one, and I might choose this one and this one, or this one and this one, or this one and this one, whatever it needs to be. Alternatively, the reason you need to roll is because if you, let's say, used Crimson Enhancements, decided, then in the next minute you decided that you want to use a Maledict Art, you can get 2 effects from the Maledict Art based on what you roll. The next feature, moving on, is Blood Trance, which gives you temporary hit points equal to your... I just realized I called it Gunslinger there. Equal to your Spellslinger level when you enter Spellslinger's Trance. Gunslinger was what I named this class before I changed the concept. So I was natural, I was going to slip up somewhere. So when you activate your Spellslinger's Trance, you gain temporary HP equal to your Spellslinger level. And the last feature you get with this class is you regain all spent hit dice on a long rest rather than half, and half your hit dice on a short rest if you choose not to spend any to heal. Because on short rests you can spend hit dice to heal, but with this feature you can choose to forego that healing and instead get half of your hit dice back, because you're going to be spending more and more hit dice to use this feature. The Ether Slinger is the next one. This one is significantly less damage oriented. This one's more tactical, more about moving and repositioning using teleportation. So the extra bullet art is the Displacement Art. A firearm, after making an attack roll with a firearm you're proficient in, you can activate the bullet art and deal 1d6 force damage, and you can choose to teleport up to 15 feet if that space is currently occupied by another creature. You appear within 5 feet of the creature. If the space is blocked, then the teleport fails. You don't have to see the space you are teleporting. You can just teleport. Very much like Dimension Door, you can just pick a direction and go. When you reach 5th level, the damage increases. The teleport range increases to 30 feet. At 11th level, the teleport range increases to 45 feet, and then the damage increases to 2d6. And then they both increase again at 17th, 60 feet, and 3d6. So every time you use Displacement Art, you can teleport yourself 60 feet in any direction at 17th level. That pretty much makes up the baseline of this class. The next feature you get is the Ethereal Form, which is very much a kind of baseline feature, more flavorful than it does synergize with the rest of the subclass. But here's what it does. When a target attempts to grapple or restrain you, or you're trying to escape a grapple or the restrained condition, instead of using your strength modifier for the check, you can use your intelligence modifier for the check or saving throw. So let's say an attack, it's one of those attacks that hits you, then requires a strength save, or you're grappled. You can roll the saving throw but use intelligence. You don't add your proficiency bonus unless you're proficient with strength saving throws, which you can get through I forget the name of the feat now. Anyway, the same applies with the ability check. If it requires an athletics check and you're not proficient in athletics, you don't add your proficiency bonus. If you are proficient in athletics, then you can add your proficiency bonus. It's essentially just substituting the ability modifier for the check. Next is Tactical Reposition at 6th level with the subclass. You can use your bonus action to switch spaces with one willing target within 60 feet of you. So let's say you're in the front lines by accident, your barbarians in 60 feet behind you, all of a sudden, with a blink of an eye, you're way at the back where you should be, and the barbarian's ready to soak up the damage like a sponge. Or, alternatively, you've got a friend who's not doing too well and you want to step in to save the day. Tactical Reposition is what you're after, which does actually come synergize very well with the next feature, Slippery Step, which you get when you reach 9th level with the subclass, and when an enemy misses you with a melee attack while in your Spellslinger's Trance, you can use your reaction to teleport up to 30 feet away from the target. Which might not seem like a lot, but it's probably a bit situational, because if the target has 30 feet of movement still, and they have an extra attack to use, then they can just run up to you again. But if they've had to run up to you and don't have enough movement to catch up, or if they only have one attack, then you can effectively just say nope. It's again pretty situational, but if you're combining it with tactical reposition, it can be pretty handy to get in and out of sticky situations. The next and final feature for the subclass is Plane Piercer, which when you use your displacement art, you can choose to make the attack fire from another location within 60 feet of you. You don't need to be able to see where you're firing from, but you do need to be able to see the target. This is to add to the tactical aspect of the class, so you can focus around teleporting and then shooting from somewhere else completely to keep your enemy on their toes. The next and final subclass is the Shadeslinger, very much rogue inspired. So the extra bullet is Shadow Shot. You have to be hidden to use this art. And when you do, the attack deals necrotic damage equal to 1d8 plus half your Spellslinger level. And it does not, using an attack of this art does not end your hiding, and it makes no sound. Which might not seem like a great buff, because if you've got an extra attack, you're just going to fire again and they're going to know where you are anyway. But because of the nature of the hidden condition, you will get both of your attacks with advantage, which is, if you ask me, a pretty good deal. Just ask the rogue. The third level feature, you get proficiency in stealth if you didn't already, and if you're already proficient in stealth, then you gain expertise, as in the rogue or bard feature, expertise. Additionally, when you're in dim light or darkness, you have advantage on stealth checks. Typically, if you're in darkness, you have advantage anyway, but this just cements that. Lastly, you get the feature, or at 6th level, rather, you get the feature Shadow Tricks, which you learn the Darkness spell, which does not count towards your total spells known. Once per long rest, you can cast the spell without spending a spell slot. You also gain Dark Vision up to 60 feet that works in non-magical and magical darkness. So, let's say you're in the middle of the day and you want to use your Shadow Shot art. Well, darkness. Just chuck it right there and you can see unimpeded. Next is Undetected, which at 9th level you learn the spell Passed Without a Trace, which does not count towards your total spells known, and you can cast it twice per long rest without spending a spell slot, just to really add in the I'm very good at stealth kind of vibe. Lastly, you get Quiet Caster, which when you reach 15th level with the subclass, you make no sound performing the verbal components of a spell. You also have advantage on sleight of hand checks trying to cast the somatic and material components of a spell. So if you ever try and cast a spell in public and it has somatic components and the DM says make a sleight of hand check, you get advantage on that. You also make no sound when performing the verbal components, so makes you a very good sneaky caster. Now, the next stuff is not crucial to the class. I've just included it because not all people will know where to find this. This is a quick table of some of the firearms that you will see. Commonly, this is actually stuff you'll see in Critical Role. This is the mechanics Matthew Mercer uses for Percival. So if you're watching Critical Role Campaign 1 and you really want to be Percival, then here you are. This is the Pepper Box and also the Bad News, his two iconic weapons in my opinion. Here are all the properties they have, all the damage they deal, and then how those properties actually work. So the reload property is how many times you can attack before you have to reload with an action, and you must have a free hand. So if a weapon's two-handed, then you can take a hand off to reload. So it just means if you've got one hand bound or one hand missing, then you can't reload. And lastly is the misfire property, which is the big downside to using firearms ever. Because essentially, For most of them, it's only a misfire. For these two, your palm pistol and your pistol, it's only a misfire score of 1. For the musket and pepper box and the blunderbuss, it's a misfire score of 2. For the bad news, it's a misfire score of 3. When the dice roll is equal to or lower that misfire score, the weapon breaks. The attack misses, and the weapon cannot be used until you spend an action to repair it with Tinker's Tools, which is a DC 8 plus your misfire score. And if that check fails, then you have to spend half of the cost of the weapon in materials to repair it. If you aren't proficient in firearms and you use it, the misfire score goes up by 1. So that is a pretty big downside when you're using one of the bigger firearms, because that essentially, a misfire score of 2 is double the chance of a natural 1. Misfire score of 3 is triple the chance of a natural 1, which is why they deal extra damage and they have better range, because that is the trade-off. You've doubled your chance of failure, of critical failure. Here is our spell list. So the spell list is a combination of, I've taken spells from the Artificer and Wizard spell list, I've put them together, and had a look at some things that made sense. I've taken a combination of utility spells such as Long Strider, Jump, Expeditious Retreat, Feather Fall, and some other spells that just seem like they make sense. Magic Missile, Shield, Thunderwave, Catapult, Melf's Acid Arrow, something that would make sense to be shot out of a gun, for example. Or Magic Missile if you want to go full anime. Magic Weapon if you want to enhance your gun. Misty Step if you really want to go into that teleportation vibe. Counterspell and Dispel Magic, obviously, they're the bread and butter. Fireball, Lightning Bolt, stuff like that makes sense. Same with Cone of Cold and like Wall of Fire. It just makes sense to be coming out of a gun. Lastly, I do have a feat that I made specifically for this class. It does require the class, called Magically Enhanced. You increase your dexterity or intelligence by 1 to a maximum of 20. Your movement speed increases by 5 feet, and attacks made with firearms in melee range no longer suffer disadvantage. Here is some credit to the artists. So this cover art up here is both actually from the same artwork. I have cropped it and cut it to suit. And all the other stuff, it's a bit of a disclaimer, a change log, and keeping up to date. So there's some links to my Reddit, where I've posted this, my YouTube, which you're on now, and my Discord server, which I'm going to be working a little harder on now. Anyway, that's probably a little longer than I intended it to be, but that is the Spellslinger. I will leave a Homebrewery link, which will have an updated version in the description below. And, of course, have a wonderful day, you amazing people, and I'll see you all in the next one, hopefully. Bye-bye.